Black Clock Audio Tales is brought to you by BunnySlippers.com. Embrace winter with a pair of Dino sound slippers from BunnySlippers.com. They're soft, they're cool, they make sounds when you walk around. If sound-making slippers aren't your things, if you want slippers that keep your feet warm, they've got slippers you can plug into USB ports, slippers you can microwave, and slippers that just keep your feet warm because they're fuzzy and novelty. If there's a character that you like, they probably got a slipper for it. If there's an animal that you like, they probably got a slipper for it. BunnySlippers.com. It's not just bunny slippers. Or a warehouse for Chris Knight cosplay. For all the real genius fans out there. Black Clock Audio Tales is a daily podcast that, gosh darn it, for the last week, we've been bringing you about an hour and a half, 2 hours in some cases, Wuthering Heights. Out on the moors. Out up to no good, making other people miserable. Heathcliff and Catherine. Wrecking stuff. Well, we're going to talk to Ken Hite, and Ken Hite's going to talk to us about Wuthering Heights. So here we go, and if you want to support the show, please go to pgttcm.com. Become a member of our beer cult, or our t-shirt cult, or our advert cult. Help support the show, keep the lights on and the equipment working. All right, Ken Hite, after this word from Monster Kid Radio.
Prepare for a spine-tingling, nerve-shattering podcast featuring all your favorite monsters. You won't believe your ears when you listen to Monster Kid Radio. Hear your host, Derek M. Cook, and his ever-rotating stable of guests discuss your favorite classic and sometimes not-so-classic monster movies. Subscribe to Monster Kid Radio through iTunes or Stitcher, or visit monsterkidradio.net before the next weekly episode of Monster Kid Radio. Go through the archives for interviews with Sarah Karloff, Victoria Price, and Joel Hodgson. Listen to the discussions about movies like Creature from the Black Lagoon, Island of Terror, and King Kong. And don't forget convention coverage from Monster Bash and the H.P. Lovecraft Film Festival, Classic Monsters, Modern Talk, and the Head of Rondo Hatton. Only on Monster Kid Radio.
Welcome back to Black Clock Audio Tales, and this week for Brontë Bronty Bronti, we are doing Wuthering Heights, and with us we have not Dr. Andrew Grace, but Ken Hite talking about Wuthering Heights, and we won't even make him sing that Kate Bush song. So,
thank God.
How's it going, Ken?
It is your audience that is the winners in this, not anyone else.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, no, it's going great. Always good to come on and talk. This is sort of out of my area, except that I love the novel so much, and I think it's such a great example of the Gothic and such a great example of the demonic, really, in fiction, that, you know, when people talk about it as a love story, I'm like, are we even reading the same book?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it's a love story in that it's a weird, horrible story, but really? That was your first takeaway. Was love. Weird choice.
Yeah, I really feel that there's really no good love story in the Gothic tradition, and the Gothic tradition is a lot of examples of bad relationships, whether it be Heathcliff and Catherine, whether it be Nina and Dracula, whether it be Victor and his creature.
Or Victor and poor Elizabeth, God bless her.
Oh yeah, or maybe I'm just listing all of the bad relationships so far.
Well, I mean, I guess part of it is that a good relationship is not super exciting.
Very true.
I mean, it's exciting when you're in it, but it's not exciting to hear about. You know, people are like, "Hey Ken, how's Sheila? She's great." There, that's not really a Gothic novel, is it?
No.
But yeah, I mean, so reading about people having horrible lives makes for better story and can make for better literature if you're Emily Bronte.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, even Jane Eyre, which I think is a much more conventional romance, and which is one of my wife's favorite novels ever. That's a problematic relationship, as we would say on the Twitters.
Yeah. That's
not a good look. Mr. Rochester and his crazy wife and his governess, who he is making very inappropriate approaches to. That's a bad situation all the way around. Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. That's another very bad relationship that you don't want anyone to be in. But they just make better stories, and they certainly make better Gothics. I think that you're right, that the part of it is that the classic Gothic has such insipid characters because they're not really the point, that you can't imagine a good relationship for anyone.
Yeah. Because
who cares? It'd be like, oh, my hamsters are friends. All right, fine. But in this, Emily Bronte solves the problem by making both parts of the relationship bug nuts and damaged and bad and horrible. And I think, to sort of get it out there, that we are meant to understand, or maybe not understand consciously, but definitely read subconsciously, that Heathcliff is a devil or a demon or a color out of space or something. Heathcliff is bad news. And in every way she signals that, and she talks about how he's an adopted homeless boy and he's a dark-skinned gypsy in aspect, and those are warning words.
Oh yeah.
You're reading something in 1847. This is not, oh, thank goodness we're doing outreach to the troubled youths. This is, you are going to regret that. I mean, he just needs horns and a tail to be clearer.
Yes.
And he's like, Damien in The Omen. Everything that he does is this sort of, and it does help that everyone he ever deals with is an idiot, right?
Yeah.
That Hindley is a chucklehead. That Edgar is a goof. I mean, that Heathcliff is very much the smartest guy in the room the whole time. But in a lot of ways, part of the weakness and corruption that you see in that family can be drawn symbolically to Heathcliff's presence.
Yeah.
And in some cases, it's straight out due to his machinations or his psychological undermining that the character's weak points become apparent. And I think one of the interesting things about that helps my argument is that the whole novel is told from at least one and usually two different two removed viewpoints. So it's Lockwood hearing the story from old Nellie, right?
Yeah.
So we are 2 layers away from the truth. So when you think of Nellie Dean as watching this happen, maybe Heathcliff does have horns and a tail, and she just refuses to admit it. Because she's as fascinated with Heathcliff as everybody is. Maybe Heathcliff is overtly demonic. It's a very Mackin story, and maybe it's just because it sort of takes place in these in these sort of moors and wilds and fens that I associate with Mackin fiction. But also I think it's because there's this sort of weird white people-y outside guy who just shows up and ruins everything.
Yeah.
And of course, Catherine deserves every minute of it. They at no point, and that's one of the great things about this novel, is that there's no point at which Catherine, even when she's thinking, oh, should I be good like Edgar? You're like, you never are going to be good like Edgar. Just give it up. You're awful. You were born bad. You're a Kardashian. You're a problem child. And her, and even when she, marries Edgar, it's just obviously going to destroy Edgar and not fix her at all.
Yeah.
And so in a way you're sort of rooting for these 2 crazy kids to get together, and in another way it's like, is this going to be plutonium? Right? Did we make a critical mass if Catherine and Heathcliff get together? Is the whole south of England going to be sleeting with demonic alpha radiation now because of this weird connection? But we don't know, because we have to look through Nellie Dean's eyes, and Nellie Dean is written to be so conventional and so boring and so sort of old and timorous and nothing that the novel is about, that the fact that it's her eyes we're reading it through is maybe one of the greatest things about this novel, right? That Emily Bronte is not just telling us the story. She's very clearly telling us a version of the story, and a version that someone is looking at kind of through their they've got their fingers over their eyes and they're sort of peeking through like it's a horror movie. And even that literally happens, that they're peeking in the windows of this story. And it's very much, it's not about voyeurism. It's about sort of being terrified to look away. It's like a car crash. Right? I mean, am I off base? Is this?
No. It's like I hope they get together just so they leave everyone else alone.
There's a great line that someone said about Thomas Carlyle, was that it's a good thing that he married Mrs. Carlyle and made 2 people miserable instead of 4. And I used to think that was what Oscar Wilde said about Henry James, and it turned out it was blackguarding Henry James. So it's Thomas Carlyle that has a crazy wife, and is also himself a job of work. But when you read it and people are like, oh, this is all about social class, it's like, well, it's not about social class, in that it's an English novel, but really all about social class. It's like saying Dracula's all about social class. It is, right? It's about bourgeois heroes defeating an aristocrat. Yeah. And foreigner. It's very much about the rise of the new woman, but it's kind of also about a vampire. Right? It's about a guy that drinks your blood and lives forever. I think that this is, yes, it's about, hypocrisy, and it's about gender, and it's about all the other things that people want it to be about. But I think mostly it's about a demon. A very bad boy named Heathcliff.
Yeah.
I mean, what's your take? Do you read Wuthering Heights obviously you're putting it on a monster podcast, so no, but do you read it as a naturalist novel? Do you read it
no.
unfortunateness?
I see it. I see it as assholes being assholes to assholes. I see it as like.
But that's a natural novel. I think that's pretty much everything that George Gissing wrote.
No, definitely. I mean, I have it in here because of the fact that it's gothic literature, and that's just one of the things I like to throw in here. But I don't see it as like these are like these. I've always thought of like Heathcliff as like a faun of some sort, or like some sort of like changeling or something like that. He's not a natural thing, and he brings this darkness with him. It's like maybe the moors would be a nicer place. Maybe things wouldn't be so terrible and wild if Heathcliff wasn't there with his weird gypsy energy, like making everything terrible. But it's like, as you say, Catherine's no great awesome person herself. She's like that kind of like awful girl in your like elementary school class that you think, if she just like went to another classroom, everyone would just be happy.
I mean, and I'm not the only person here. I mean, there's feminist scholars have very much connected Wuthering Heights to the Gothic, which I think used to be controversial. And then they've also said, well, if you look at Catherine, if you give her agency and you don't look at her as sort of a Mina figure, then she's, like you say, she's just as awful, and she's just as vampiric in a way as Heathcliff is.
Psychic vampires.
The way that she basically, the psychic vampire is exactly right. That she sort of drains Edgar and she drains everybody around her. And that only Heathcliff is sort of the positive pole to her negative pole of the battery, and that them together creates this horrible dysfunctional charge that endangers everyone around them. and that if you want to make it about society, I guess you can say that if society knew what it was doing, it would have exiled them both to live on the moors as babies, like Eskimos. The fact that society insists on tying property and social standing and all these other questions into it just ruins the life of everyone else. Right? Because if you could have just thrown Catherine to the wolves and let Heathcliff chase after her, everything would be fine. But you can't do that in society. She needs a position, and they need an income, and they need the property to be she needs the property So the need to be within society is what destroys society. It's not so much that Heathcliff is here to eat his way through, through Somerset or whatever place this is supposed to be set.
Yeah.
It's that because Heathcliff lands in a society, the society's own structures are corroded by touching him. And if society could just stop touching him, it would be great.
Yeah.
But with Wuthering Heights,
yes,
there's so much stuff going on. And again, I'm not the only person. I find that Dante Gabriel Rossetti said the action is laid in hell. He is not wrong.
Yes. Yeah.
It only seems that everyone has English names in hell, which may have just been being half Italian and living in Italy, in England. But oh my God, can you imagine being Dante Gabriel Rossetti and having to eat English food every day? That would be hell.
Yes.
But anyway, Wuthering Heights is got all kind of stuff going on, and it of course is a Gothic because the weather is such an important part just by itself, which is a sign of Gothicness. That literally tempestuous emotions are there, reflecting both Heathcliff's action and reflecting the setting of the book. The argument that it's not a Gothic would be to me a very weird argument to make.
Okay.
So I'm 1,000% with you that this is a Gothic.
All right. I have a kind of a stranger question. Do you think that you could turn Wuthering Heights into an RPG?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Very easily.
Okay. How would one go about doing that? And
first of all, you could just do it straight up as a LARP.
Okay.
You pick one of the scenes that has a bunch of characters, set everybody at it. Someone is Heathcliff. They get a point every time someone collapses in tears. Go. And then that would be great as a LARP. As an RPG, you would do it as possibly, looking into the activity. You're a monster hunter and you've come across it, like maybe you're like an M.R. James protagonist, and you're trying to trace a book, and you wind up at Wuthering Heights and you have to discover what's going on with Heathcliff and Catherine, and you track some hideous approach to their life, or you could borrow The Owl Service by Alan Gardner, and have the same pattern restart again with this new family that just lives in the cottage. And they don't know why they're suddenly being trapped in this, state of misery. It's because they live in Wuthering Heights and it's haunted by the presence of Catherine and Heathcliff. And so you have to exorcise that somehow, either from within. Everyone plays the new family, but you're also, Edgar or Catherine or Isabella or whoever.
Yeah.
Or you're playing it as the outside investigator who has to figure out, oh, right, these guys are Wuthering Heights. That means we have to find Catherine and Heathcliff, dig up their bodies and burn them, or whatever.
That's...
Or at least separate them.
That's pretty... Yeah. Okay. That's... Yeah, no, that's...
Right, because Heathcliff is buried next to Catherine, and that turns out to be just enough to cause problems. Just dig up Heathcliff and, throw him in the ocean or something.
Oh wow, I could see that definitely being like a one shot in Call of Cthulhu where you're like,
yeah,
wait a minute, this doesn't have anything to do. This has something to do with ghosts. Not one of these again.
Right. Or you could, make Heathcliff be, one of the, a thing like the great god Pan that was born out of, a psychic experimentation. Or you could make him be one of the white people from the Tale of the White People.
Yeah.
You can do all kinds of things with him.
Well, he is a dark, goatish looking young man.
Yeah, he could be a spawn of Yog-Sothoth, which I totally buy, by the way.
Yeah. And if Heathcliff is a spawn of Yog-Sothoth, there's possibly a sibling out in the moors somewhere.
Right. Stomping around.
Doing its thing, yeah. Interesting. Oh, wow.
Right. And then maybe it is the ritual, I don't want to say ritual mating, but the ritual connection of Heathcliff and Catherine that keeps the spawn quiescent. And so, because as long as the one spawn is like burning off all this energy with Catherine, either because she's of a Shub-Niggurath lineage or just because that's how he wants to spend his energy, they can't get together and cleanse the earth the way that the Dunwich boys wanted to.
Yeah.
So the invisible spawn is just sort of lurking out on the moors, eating people every now and again, but it's not doing anything. But if Heathcliff and Catherine are separated, that's when the spawn gets up to activities.
Or maybe it's not a physical spawn, and it's just this psychic energy spawn that just kind of like
ruins everybody.
As opposed to destroying their houses. It's like it's attacking. There's no Wilbur Fry being attacked at Coal Creek Glen. It's everyone's family. Anyone who comes in contact with Catherine.
Yep. Or her children.
Yeah. So, is there any way to steer this ship back to Wuthering Heights?
I don't know. It's your podcast, buddy.
I know. I'm just curious.
All I do is answer at great length.
Sure,
That's
yeah.
all I ever do.
Definitely.
No, I mean, you've read the novel.
Yeah.
Probably more recently than I have. What are your big takeaways from it besides, oh my God, Ken, you're so right. You're right about everything.
Pretty much, Ken, you're right about everything. But no, I mean, it's a novel about horrible people, and there is like a supernatural element to it, even though, I mean, it's like, is there supposed to be a supernatural element? It's like, I can't really tell if, like, I don't know. I've always wondered if that's like supposed to be something that we're supposed to kind of take away, or if that's just kind of like just because the fact that if you read as much ghost stories and spookiness as you and I both have, you just go, wait a minute, is there supposed to be? Yeah. It's like reading The Great or reading F. Scott Fitzgerald and being like, wait a minute, there's no occult presence in this at all. What's going on?
How do you even write a book like that?
Yeah.
Although Molly Tanzer apparently has put an occult presence into The Great Gatsby with her Creatures of Wanton Ruin. So
nice.
Nothing is impossible.
I'm going to have her on.
And you absolutely should have Molly on. She's amazing. And isn't there an adventure called Gatsby and the Great Race?
Yes, there is. I believe there is, yeah.
So that's fun. There's nothing you can't get the mythos all over.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know anything really about the Brontes per se, except they lived in that miserable parsonage and had to deal with their stupid brother.
Sure.
But I don't know if Emily Bronte was a big fan of ghosts. I don't know if Emily Bronte thought she was writing a normal family story because her family was so fucked up.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about the creation of this book. I read a critical edition, and all the critics, to me, seemed so weirdly wrong-headed. I mean, again, they point out things like the use of language and the characters mirroring each other and all kinds of good stuff like that. But they're all like intensely insistent on reading it in a what do I want to say? Maybe not non-supernatural, but a non-gothic way.
Sure.
And to me, that's such a weird way to do it. It's like if you read Frankenstein just as science fiction. Yeah. Okay. It's like, well, it is science fiction. You're not wrong. But did you notice he was built out of corpses and it's a creepy gothic? And then so the critical edition that I read was very much dealing with the characters as human types and the romances. And again, yeah, Emily Bronte is a great novelist. It's a great novel. Those characters are not cartoons. You recognize bad behavior of the part of why it works so well, kind of like Stephen King, is that you recognize the human responses as the kind of responses human beings would have. Yeah. Right? And that's part of the genius of only showing Heathcliff through these, 2 or 3 different viewpoints, is that you never really look into Heathcliff and have a moment where Heathcliff is like writing in his diary, today I'm going to ruin Edgar Linton.
Yeah.
Right? You just sort of find out that he's doing it, and all kinds of motives are imputed to him, but there's never a point at which you are inside Heathcliff. In the same way that you're never inside Dracula.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. But I have no idea. Have you read anything about Emily Bronte that might indicate what she thought she was doing?
Oh, man. I just know that she just grew up fairly religious. School, awful childhood, awful siblings, awful parents. Drank, my favorite thing is the fact that, the family drank grave water because of the way that the water drained, industrial mill pre-industrial mill grave water is what the family's well pretty much consisted of. And I don't know, I think that has something to do with it. If you don't believe in ghosts, it has something to do with it. If you do believe in ghosts, man, that's a lot of ghost water.
Right, that's a lot of ghost water. I think I remember hearing that Tim Powers has kept trying to write a novel about the Brontes forever and is never quite figured out how to get around it. But yeah, if they're living on a moor drinking ghost water, I think that's probably it.
Oh yeah.
And then she dies of TB, which I guess is sort of vampire-y.
Yeah.
And sort of Bowie. I just have no idea that, what she thought she was doing. And she, I guess that's the way that we have with the Brontes, is that they were not, they make Jane Austen look like a gadabout. Yeah. Right?
Definitely. They didn't really live all that long. They weren't all that written of. And I know there's other podcasts and books out there that can really go into their life and stuff like that, but that's not this podcast.
No, this is not that podcast.
No, we want to talk about...
And I apologize for asking.
No problem. I think we've done a pretty good job of talking about the spookiness of Wuthering Heights. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, Ken, thank you for coming on and talking about your personal theories about Wuthering Heights and informing us how we could play it as a role-playing game or introduce it into our own role-playing games.
Yeah, it's just such a, when I read it, I was just amazed. How has no one told me that there was an Arthur Machen novel written before he was born about a crazy, demonic love affair? What's going on there?
Yeah.
and then all the reviewers were like, well, I don't much approve of that relationship. It's like, well, that's what the novel's about. Yeah. Dummies. we still, I think, can't look away, critically from the weird, messed up relationship between Heathcliff and Catherine, and sort of say, what's going on with the book, though?
Yeah.
And I think maybe that's just me. I'm sure there's reams of criticism about the Brontes, and no more than you did I do any work.
Oh, yeah.
Let's just assume that someone out there has read the Brontes, has read Wuthering Heights as a Machen story, and say, go find them and read them, and they're probably right.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but, this is maybe a call to arms to people. Write your papers, write your books about how, I don't know, how Bronte sisters' stories are spooky gothic stories, how Wuthering Heights is a pre-Machen whatnot.
Yeah, and it's really short, right? It's not a big novel.
No.
You can read it in a day or 2 days.
Yeah, I was able to fit it into 1 week.
It's not like reading Melmoth the Wanderer or whatever.
Yeah.
Where you're just going to be, living with that nightmare thing.
But,
no, if you read Wuthering Heights, it's snappy. It zooms by.
Yeah, no, as editing for audio goes, it was so snappy compared to Mary Shelley's 3 volumes, The Last Man.
Yeah, that was the choice you made.
I know. Whoa. Yeah, well, I got it out of the way. Don't have to do it in years from now when I'm like, oh man, I need something with Mary Shelley. I'll just have someone fancy read Frankenstein.
There you go. That's what you can do.
All right. Well, Ken, thank you again so much for being on Black Clock Audio Tales special 20-something, I think. I don't know. But thank you again for talking Wuthering Heights, and we'll have you on again sometime soon to talk about something spooky or role-playing game related, I'm sure.
All right. I look forward to it, man. It's always great to come on.
Oh, yeah. All right. And I'll see you at the HP Lovecraft Film Festival, Portland,
yes,
Oregon.
Yes, you will. Or at the very least, just at the social gathering at Sam's before we then see nothing of each other for the rest of the show.
Definitely. And I think that should be next week when this drops. So, yeah, no.
All right.
Calendar-wise, I'm at Oktoberfest right now.
Right. Calendar-wise, I'm in Chicago getting ready to go to the HP Lovecraft Film Festival.
Oh, right. Cool. All right. Well, we'll see you, Ken, and have yourself a good one.
You too, man.
All right.
Bye.